I guess I should insert a Fast and Furious joke based on the title of this vlog. The Faster and the Furious, parentheses, Scully. But I'll let you do that. Insert whatever Vin Diesel joke you want. Personally, I love the Fast and the Furious movies. They're like my junk food. They're just very silly, and I enjoy watching them. So I'm gonna take that with what you will. But today we are not talking about the Fast and the Furious movies starring Vin Diesel or Lucas Black or Dwayne The Rock Johnson, I guess, depending on which the Fast and the Furious movie you're watching. I hope they just keep making the Fast and the Furious movies, and it'll be like the Land Before Time franchise where there's just like 47 fucking movies. Anyway, my mother-in-law got me into the Fast and Furious movie, so I'm blaming her. Bless her soul. I love the Fast and the Furious. Anyway, we are talking about one of my favorite episodes today. It is my favorite episode out of season 7, and I believe it has not only the greatest ending of any episode in the X-Files, but the best scene in the X-Files. It's certainly my favorite scene in the X-Files. So, it is the season 7 episode, Orison. Now, if you're not a devout X-Files fan or you're new to the fandom, bienvenidos. But you might not be familiar with this episode. It flies under the radar. It definitely falls in the shadow of its prequel episode, and that is Irresistible, which you've probably heard of if you have much contact with the X-Files or the X-Files fandom. Irresistible is this episode in season 2, and it introduces us to the character of Donnie Pfaster, this creepy-ass motherfucker who just loves to brutalize, torture, and kill women. And that's pretty much what he does. We'll talk more about Donnie Pfaster in a minute. And Orison is its sequel episode, where Pfaster comes back, and Mulder and Scully have to apprehend him. Now, if you know anything about the episode Irresistible, Scully is Pfaster's final victim. She is the one that got away. He captured her, he was ready to brutalize her, torture her, and kill her, and Mulder came in and saved her. But I think Scully kind of saved herself. I have more to say on that in a minute. She definitely saves herself in this episode. Orison. Irresistible is a fan favorite of the X-Files. It's discussed in the fandom. Many people list it as one of their top episodes, and for good reason. Like, it has some wonderful, like, character development moments for Scully, for Mulder, and it has a scary-ass villain in Donnie Pfaster. Not many people talk about Orison, and I want to. I want to change that mainly because I'm difficult. I love Orison more than I love Irresistible. And Irresistible is a pretty fucking awesome episode, but I like Orison a little bit more, and I'm going to explain my reasoning in a minute. And let's get right into it, okay? This episode is written by Chip Johansson. It is directed by Rob Bowman. I believe it's directed by Rob Bowman. I may be wrong. Rob Bowman generally does some bomb-ass directing. There's some sequences and imagery in this episode that freaks me the fuck out. And I'm 39 years old, and it scares me just as much as it scared me when I first watched this episode when I was 15. So let's talk about it. The episode begins in Illinois, and Donnie Pfaster is serving a life sentence there in a maximum security prison. This episode, of course, is brought to you by water, which I'm drinking out of my Universal Studios mug because I need a lot of water. There's a heat wave going on outside, which is why I'm inside with my, maybe you can see it, my I Want to Believe poster. So, it begins with Donnie Pfaster and these other inmates listening to this reverend, and he'll come into the prison and, preach to the inmates there. And, this guy is saying, he sings that refrain that conservative Christians love to sing. That if you've done unspeakable shit, God will forgive you. You know, as long as you're a white man. Read the fine print. Conservative evangelicals love to sing that refrain. I've got a lot more to say on that. So, then you see the Reverend do this thing where he says, "Glory, amen," and it causes the men in the congregation to, like, kind of be hypnotized. So then you see Donnie Pfaster in the garment shop at the in the prison. It's like this garment shop, and they make garments. And this guard's hassling him, and yeah, same. I mean, like, I wouldn't be polite to Donnie Pfaster either if I knew what he did, okay? Then you see this guy, he gets his fingers cut off. It's extremely graphic. Content warning of this episode. There's a lot of graphic shit, and not just gory stuff. Like, there's discussion of sexual assault, misogyny, violence against women. So just be prepared. If you want to watch this episode and you've never watched it before and that kind of thing really bothers you, just go into it knowing that. Now, when I watch the episode Orison, I have to clear out a week because I will be fucked up for the rest of the week. So I'm doing this for you guys. I love you. Orison's one of my favorite episodes, but it's a fucking hard watch. So, this guy gets his fingers cut off. Everybody's distracted. And Donnie Pfaster just walks out of the prison. I love how this episode, I think we can talk about this now, how this episode sets up the idea that it's going to be a divine act, like the hand of God, that frees this honest-to-God serial killer. And it's really just the incompetence of law enforcement. And I said, boy, oh boy, doesn't that just hit the nail on the head, right? Like, speaking of X-Files episodes that are still relevant. Exactly. So then you get the title sequence, and then you see Mulder and Scully, and they're at this prison. This U.S. Marshal is, like, explaining this case to them, giving us some nice exposition. He's like, as you know, Donnie Pfaster did all of this in 1994. Mulder's making some dumbass jokes. Usually, when I get out of bed in the morning, Mulder, day to day, just mildly irritates me. This is one of the episodes where I want to push him in a trash can. Like, he's pretty awful. And I'll talk more on that. I have a lot to say about Mulder in this episode. Scully is visibly upset. And this Marshal's like, well, you guys investigate the X-Files, so this must be a supernatural guy. And then Scully looks at the guy, and she's like, there's nothing supernatural about Donnie Pfaster. He's just a fucking evil man. And she walks out. The Marshal kind of gives Mulder this look, like, and then shakes his head, and it's like he's reacting to this like Donnie Pfaster was like a schoolyard bully and like pulled Scully's pigtail, not like he's a grown man that like captured her and brutalized her. So fuck you, dude. If you get really sick of white men and their shit, you'll get very upset with this episode. It's just Scully dealing with white men shit, I think. So, Scully goes into the chapel at the prison, and she's looking around, and then Mulder comes in there, and he gives Scully one of Mulder's, famous Mulder quotes, where he's like, look, Scully, this is bothering you, and you need to step away, says the man who never let his personal feelings or his emotions get in the way of any FBI investigation that I know of. Sarcasm. Like, Mulder, that's what he does. That's what he's known for. to let his personal feelings and his agenda and emotions get in the way of an investigation, usually to the detriment of the investigation, him, and especially to Scully. But then it's rich of him to tell his partner, oh, Scully, you need to step away. You're too emotional. Like, it very much reminds me of how men point to women and say, oh, but women are too emotional to do this, when men are absolutely the biggest crybabies on the face of the earth. So this kind of sets the standard for how shitty Mulder's going to be in this episode. And I've rewatched this episode. I wanted to see, like, is Mulder as bad as I thought he was when I first watched this episode? And yeah, he's pretty terrible. But then I thought about the episode Kitsunegari, which is very similar to this episode. It's a sequel episode where a big bad comes back, only this big bad, Robert Patrick Modell, is after Mulder. And Scully is telling Mulder the same thing. She's like, you don't need to get involved with this, you know. And many people point to Mulder, like, wanting to steer Scully away from this as him caring for her, and he doesn't want her to get involved in this because it bothers her so badly. And I can kind of see that, but god damn is he an asshole about it. Like, fuck Mulder. Yeah, he's a shitty human being here. Like, first of all, she's a grown-ass woman, Mulder, and she tells him that. She's like, I can't walk away from this. She's like, more innocent women will die if I walk away from this. And, yeah, she's right. She's not wrong. And it's a clear distinction of how Mulder and Scully approach investigations. Mulder very much approaches investigations to further his agenda, to find aliens, or the paranormal, or monsters, or what shit. Scully approaches investigation purely to help, to advocate for victims. And, like, I could get behind this thing, this sentiment that Mulder wants Scully to step away from this investigation to protect her, which is valid, okay? Because she's his partner, and at this point in the series, they were definitely in a romantic relationship. So they were more, I'm not going to say they were more than friends. I hate that saying because friendship's pretty fucking powerful. I mean, watch My Little Pony and you'll know that, right? There's a whole fucking show about talking horses about the magic of friendship. All right, so I'm not going to explain that to you. I'm going to let you watch fucking 9 seasons of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And on a side note, do it. It's a great show. I want to, someday I'll do a vlog about My Little Pony Friendship is Magic where I, like, break it down episode by episode, but right now I just don't have the time. I don't think anyone has the time. I think that would take ages to do. Anyway, friendship is magic, and I'm not ever going to say that a romantic relationship is bigger or stronger than a friendship, because friendships are pretty fucking powerful. But at this point, Mulder and Scully's friendship has blossomed into a romance. I have a whole red string conspiracy about when their romance began, and I think it began much earlier than this. I think it began in season 2. We just saw it off screen. So Mulder does want to protect her, and I can see that, but the way he approaches it, I want to punch him in the face. Like, the thing about Mulder that turns me the most off about him in this episode is how he gaslights Scully. And I don't care what your reasoning is, that shitty behavior. Oh, God, I have so much to say about it. So, they're in this chapel, and Mulder's like, Scully, just step away, and don't let your personal feelings, like, cloud your judgment, because that's never happened to you, Mulder. Also, Mulder's hypocrisy. It just gets to me. Wow. And Scully starts hearing this song, It's called Don't Look Any Further. And let me be the first to say it's fucking slap, okay? Think late 80s Marvin Gaye, like Sexual Healing. Or maybe that was mid 80s. Anyway, Sexual Healing, Let's Get It On, that kind of thing. It's that kind of genre of music. It's very nice. Scully keeps hearing this song, which she has not heard since she was an adolescent, and she keeps hearing it like over and over throughout this investigation. This brings up an interesting point. So, in season 7 specifically, there are 2 major episodes told from Scully's point of view, and there's other ones, but like these 2 stand out to me, and that's Orison and All Things. And in both Orison and All Things, you see how Scully views the world, that she can see patterns and clues and details that other people just don't notice. And that's driven home in this episode. There's other episodes where she does, like in Revelations and in Beyond the Sea, and 1,000 other fucking episodes. And I believe that is a facet of Scully's autism. Now, it has never been canonically confirmed that Scully's autistic, but in the fandom, many autistic people are attracted and have this. Scully's character resonates with them because she has behaviors that autistic people see in themselves, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Speaking as an autistic person, Asperger's person myself, like, yeah, like, the things I do, like, Scully is 2 steps ahead of everyone as far as, like, noticing things and being able to do things no one else can, but she's like 4 steps behind everyone as far as like social skills goes. And that's how I feel a lot. Like, I can do these great and wonderful things, but I kind of suck at personing. And Scully really sucks at personing, and I love that about her. But, like, Scully being psychic, which is canonical, and having these precognitive powers, one theme throughout the X-Files is that people can do this just through sheer force of will. I'm thinking of Clyde Bruckman, Robert Patrick Modell. It's just people being able to see things and notice things that other people can't. And this is what gives them these supernatural powers. First of all, that's bomb-ass disability representation right there. And I know this was probably not intentional by the X-Files writers, which were all white men in, I think, 278, 11 seasons of the X-Files, and 4 episodes were written by people that were not white men, that were not straight white men. So, you know, I was making this joke with one of my best friends, and I said, even the U.S. presidents are more diverse than the X-Files writers. There's a hilarious meme, and it shows the X-Files writers, like the team of writers, and the text on the meme says, "But look, some of them had beards. What a diverse group." And I mean, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I got more to say about that too. But unintentionally, like, Scully having these precognitive powers, and it's a facet of her autism. Like, when I was a little kid, and I didn't even know what autism was, you know, I was raised in this conservative community in the late 80s, early 90s. I had no idea what autism was, but seeing this character that had these behaviors like mine was eye-opening. There was zero positive, like, canonical autistic representation when I was little, and seeing Scully, like, be this way and resonating with me as an autistic girl, like, yeah, that hit shit. Also, it's stated in this episode that the signs are there to fucking, like, solve this and bring this evil man to justice, and Scully is just the only one that notices them. So, like, okay. Let's move on. I'm going to move on before we talk about Scully's faith and how Mulder's just a fucking asshole about it. So, Scully's like, let's get started. You know, she's like, I'm not going to let this guy go free and brutalize and torture other women like me. That's just not going to happen. So, you see Pfaster, and he goes to a truck stop, and he's snooping around for his next victim. And this is the point in the vlog where I tell you how scary Donnie Pfaster is. The only villain in television that scares me on the same level as Donnie Pfaster is Paul Spector from The Fall. Which, strangely enough, Gillian Anderson also plays the protagonist, his enemy in that, Detective Stella Gibson. A lot of people ship Detective Stella Gibson and Scully, and I just want to say on the record, are you all listening? That's fucking hot, okay? I cannot wait to get the time someday, probably when I'm an old woman, to write tomes of Scully and Stella fanfiction. I'm just, that gives me a hot flash just thinking about it. But, no, actually, I am actually having a hot flash right now. Perimenopause fucking sucks. I just want everyone to know that. If you've never undergone it, do not recommend. Perimenopause fucking sucks. So, Donnie Pfaster is one of those villains, and I think you expect villains, especially ones that are men, to be loud and to yell at you and to throw things at you, and Donnie Pfaster doesn't do that. He's polite, he's soft-spoken, he's almost timid around women. And I think it's like an uncanny valley kind of thing, where it's like, this is not supposed to be how an angry, abusive man acts. And he's acting this way that's very soothing and calm. And it just pushes all my uncanny valley buttons. The actor who plays Donnie Pfaster is just this tall-ass man. And he's scary as hell. His delivery is on point. And it's pretty cool that, unlike other X-Files sequel episodes like Tombs, which happened in the same season as its prequel episode Squeeze, or like Kitsunegare, which happens like 2 seasons later from its prequel episode Pusher, like Irresistible happens all the way back in at the beginning of season 2, right after Scully's abduction. And then you get, like, mid-season 7 when Orison comes. And I gotta say, this guy who plays Donnie Pfaster, he still fucking does the delivery. Which amazes me. That he can still capture that just fucking eerie aura. Like, Donnie Pfaster's one of those villains, like, after I watch him, I want to take a shower. Like, Orison, Irresistible, Orison, and Home are the 3 episodes of the X-Files. Afterwards, I'm like getting in the shower. I'm like, I feel nasty. Like, he's just plays a fucking nasty man. And I'll get to it later. I personally don't believe Donnie Pfaster is supernatural. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Anyway, he's at a truck stop being a fucking creep. This poor girl comes up to him, and it's implied that she's a sex worker. And he picks her up. There's a waitress there at the truck stop, and she is just great. I love her. She's this kind of, this chubby woman, and she's just great. Like, I love her attitude. I love her delivery. Great side character. And her nail game's very on point. You also see how Donnie Pfaster's, like, hyper-focusing on the women's nails. And, ew, like, yeah, I want to take a shower. It just hits my, excuse me, it hits my fight or flight buttons. Ooh, I need some water. My bronchitis is doing better, but it still gets me when I talk a lot. Excuse me. Ah, I think a good portion of my vlogs are just me chugging water, which I love. So, Donnie Pfaster picks up this girl and he's going to take her home and brutalize her and kill her. And then you see Reverend Orison, who was at the beginning, like, giving this sermon to the inmates. And it is told to us that Orison has this ability. And it's funny that it's not a supernatural ability at all. He's just good at hypnotism. Like, it's a completely logical explanation. More on that in a minute. And the good Reverend Orison, instead of, like, using his power to, I don't know, free an inmate that was in prison for a very nonviolent crime like embezzlement or tax evasion, and sending that person home to his spouse and 4 children, Orison's going to fucking free a serial killer that he knows will kill again. And I just want to say, fuck you, Reverend Orison, you son of a bitch. Like, Reverend Orison is a surprisingly relevant character in the X-Files, because don't we see it every day when people give disgusting evil white men a slap on the wrist and they're like, oh, but he promises he'll be a good boy and he'll never do this again, and they're turned back out in society to do things just as terrible and sometimes worse. And it's just because of negligence and our society enabling that. Again, I don't think this was an intentional thing by the writers, but it's very on point. So instead of, like, Orison has the power to capture Donnie Pfaster again, because he knows he's going to kill this poor girl, and he just fucking lets him go. Like, Reverend Orison is just, he's human garbage. Like, he's a terrible person that he's enabling Donnie Pfaster to do this. Donnie Pfaster gets away, and Reverend Orison's, I want to say it's an El Camino, but I might be wrong. And then he runs over Reverend Orison, and I don't feel sorry for that guy. I mean, he dug his own grave, okay? That's how I feel about this guy. So then, before they escape, the U.S. Marshals show up. And they have Donnie Pfaster cornered. He's like, we're not going to make it. And Reverend Orison, like, does his hypnotism shit on them. And Pfaster gets away with this poor girl, who he immediately kills. And Reverend Orison knew he was going to do that, and he could have fucking stopped him. Fuck you, Reverend Orison. I fucking hate you. Okay. So Mulder and Scully come to see Reverend Orison in the hospital. But not before they go to the diner to, like, confront the U.S. Marshal that, you know, Reverend Orison, like, put his hoodoo on, or, well, he put his like, hypnotic trance on this guy who attacked the waitress. The waitress also, like, pours boiling coffee on this disgusting man, and I love that. Anyway, Scully goes there, and she hears this song playing called Don't Look Any Further. I love how she just wanders off. Just as this random woman, she's like, will you turn that up on the stereo? And the woman's like, sure, whatever. And it just gets me right into my little autistic soul. The way Scully would just like fucking wander off and like look at stuff. That is what I do, okay? So, that was me when I was a little kid. I was just like fucking wandering off looking at shit. So, Scully tells Mulder this story about this song that when she was a little girl, her mom came into her room and told her that her Sunday school teacher had been murdered in his front yard. And it really fucked Scully up, understandably. We also get some kind of unexpected glimpses into Scully's past. Her Sunday school teacher called her Scout, and that is a reference to the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. The protagonist is a little girl named Scout. If you know anything about To Kill a Mockingbird, if you've watched the movie or read the book, you know Scout is a little handful. And that's how I view Scully. Like, when she was a little girl, she was a little handful. And a lot of people in the fandom were like, oh, Mulder was the problem child, and you know he was like this handful for his parents. But no, I think Scully was the little whirlwind. You know, just seeing Scully interact with her siblings, with her brothers and sister, like, you just feel that she was that autistic child who was just a handful, and her her older siblings were like left to manage that. So again, like, things that I feel down in my soul. So I also think Scully was a lot like Idgie Threadgood in the movie Fried Green Tomatoes. If you've ever watched that movie, it's wonderful. It's gay. I fucking love that movie. It stars Jessica Lange. I think that's all I need to tell you. And Mary Louise Parker. So it was a movie made specifically for the gays. Little Idgie Threadgood that's how I view little Scully, like throwing off her shoes and her Sunday dress and climbing up a fucking tree, and she's like, oh, you want me to go? You can fucking get me down here, okay? Down from here, alright? I just, again, like, give me a whole fucking series about the Scullys, the Scully family. When Scully was little, I would watch the shit out of it. Fuck Mulder and his aliens. That's what I want. I want to see the psychic women of the Scully family. I want a whole series about it. So, Scully tells Mulder this story. And Mulder could, A, listen to his partner, who, I just want to say, every time she has these premonitions about things, she's never fucking wrong. I would say Scully is 99.1% right when she has these precognitive visions. And she's telling Mulder, like, I'm feeling these things, I'm experiencing these things. You know, he could, A, listen to her because she's never been wrong. Or Mulder could, B, not listen to her and just, like, not say anything. Or C, he could just fucking gaslight her. So I'm going to let you guess what Mulder does based on how he is throughout the series. If you chose the option C, that Mulder's a gaslighting piece of shit in this episode, you'd be fucking right. Okay, so I have a lot to say about this. So, first of all, I wonder if Mulder realizes how much he's like these Christian fundamentalists he hates. Because he's a lot like them. Mulder is very much that person who's like, look, as far as beliefs go, it's my way or the highway. I'm right, and everyone else is wrong. And that's interesting because Mulder is billed as this very open-minded person who's willing to accept things that other people can't, when he's really just this closed-minded twat, okay? He's Mulder is the worst kind of evangelical Christian. That's what Mulder is. He just doesn't call it by that name. Also, Scully never forces her beliefs on Mulder, and even though he very much forces his beliefs on her, strike two, Mulder, you piece of garbage. And number three, he gaslights her. Scully's obviously feeling these things. She's never been wrong before. And, even if you take out that practical observation that Scully's never been wrong when she has these precognitive visions, evidence beyond the sea, Clyde Bruckman's final repose, revelations. You want me to keep going? All Souls. Okay? I can still go on. A Christmas Carol. Scully is always fucking right when she has these premonitions. And practically, Mulder should listen to her. I mean, he'll listen to anyone else who has these premonitions, if they're a man. You know, Mulder is supposed to be this very progressive and feminist character. I keep hearing that in the fandom, and he cannot be bothered to listen to women. The only time Mulder listens to women is when it furthers his fucking agenda to find aliens, and I'll fight anyone. You know what? You don't believe me? You don't believe that Spooky Boy does that toxic shit? Watch the fucking show, okay? The only time Mulder makes a connection with a woman and listens to her is when A, she reminds him of his sister, or B, it furthers his agenda to find aliens. That's the only time it does, okay? Is when the woman substantiates his way of thinking. If the woman challenges him, he's like, it's full of bullshit. I'm not listening to this. Oh, this woman and all her emotions cannot be telling the truth. And, Mulder is, put on this pedestal as this progressive character that for a male character in the 90s, he was a very progressive character. And I can kind of see that as far as, his gentleness and his emotional side goes. But he's falling back on toxically masculine traits, like how he doesn't believe women, how he will not believe the survivors of sexual assault, how he falls back on anger and violence. Mulder's a very angry and violent person, which we'll talk about later on in this episode. But he's put on this pedestal as a very progressive character, and I just don't fucking see it. I think Chris Carter, made this thin facade of Mulder and Scully being progressive for their time, and especially in the case of Mulder, he's just not. Some of his traits maybe, but overall as a character, I just don't fucking see it. Because, like I said, whenever he's in a pinch, he falls back on those traditionally toxic masculine traits. So, whatever, float your fucking boat. So, they go to see Reverend Orison. And I love the way Scully, this is a very dark and intense episode, especially as far as Scully's interactions with people go, but there are some very cute moments she has. At one point, she's talking to Mulder, and season 7 is their honeymoon season, where they're very much realizing their sexual relationship with one another, and Scully will have these cute little interactions with Mulder. At one point in Orison, she looks up at him with big old anime eyes and gets the biggest smile on her face, and I love that. I love to see Scully smile and laugh, because I think Scully laughs 4 times in the series, and she smiles just a little bit more than that. So I just love to see Scully happy. Another thing is Reverend Orison calls her Scout. I think that's very cute. And it also freaks her out, because that's what her Sunday school teacher called her. He also greets her by saying, Agent Scully, believe in the Lord because he believes in you. And Scully's having none of this guy's shit. She looks at him and she gets that little faux sweet tone to her voice, and she's like, well, that's nice. And she's like, now let me tear you a new asshole, you gross man. So, Mulder comes in and questions Orison. And he shows him the pictures of this woman that Dottie Pfaster picked up at the truck stop and brutalized and murdered. And good, you know what, Mulder? You know what? I'm giving you a counter of solid things you did in this episode. That's number one. I'm glad you rubbed that guy's face in it, because it's very much his fault that poor woman died. All right? I'm glad you're rubbing his nose in it. So then Mulder says, Scully, look, he's like, I know you have your faith, but it's wrong, and you should believe the way I believe. Okay, so Mulder is supposed to be in love with Scully. She's supposed to be his touchstone, his 1 in 5 billion. She's supposed to be the person who makes him a better person. She completes him, and Mulder just does not respect her. You know, like, it's the way he views her faith, which is very important to her. Like, even if you take out the practicality of Scully's never wrong when she has these premonitions, which she interprets as faith-based. I have a lot to say about that. Mulder immediately dismisses them. Like, even if you take out that practicality that this will help solve the investigation, it's still shitty behavior. Okay, think about the person you love more than anyone else in the world. Are you thinking about them right now, or the people you love? And something is very important to them, and it doesn't hurt anyone. They don't try to force this belief on anybody. They're just like, this is important to me, and, you know, I value this deeply. Even if you didn't believe in this, how would you approach that? Well, as a good person, you should respect that part of your loved one. And you should say, like, okay, I don't agree with this or believe in this, but I know you do. And I should listen to you about what you have to say, because that's part of a healthy relationship when you have that communication. Mulder just fucking gaslights Scully. He's like, Scully, what you're believing is not true. But what I'm believing is true, even though it's even more far-fetched than what you're believing in. Okay, so I also want to say, this was a few months ago, and this twat on Twitter came at me and said, well, Mulder believes Scully at the end of Orison, so that makes it okay. And I'm like, okay, first of all, fuck you. Okay, he could have believed Scully 49 minutes earlier and saved her from being traumatized and brutalized by the same man a second time. You know, LOL. And also, it's just shitty behavior for a man who's supposed to love this woman more than anyone else. Like, if you want a good, like, comparison, think of how Scully views Mulder's beliefs. Like, Mulder has some pretty insane beliefs that are 99.9% wrong most of the time. I also want to point out that a little bit. But name a time when Scully did not go out on a limb and say, okay, Mulder, I don't believe the way you believe, but I'm going to meet you halfway and try to see things from your perspective. She's never not done that. Now, look at Mulder and name the times he has gone out on a limb and said to Scully, like, look, I don't believe the way you believe, even though all of your premonitions are correct and come true, and I'm going to try to see things from your perspective. I can count it on one hand when he's done that. And it's out of character for him, because he's constantly gaslighting her. And I think if the fandom, the show and the fandom acknowledged this about Mulder, and they addressed it, and they said, this is shitty and problematic behavior, and we need to work through this and explore this, you know, and make him have a character arc where he's not such a shitty person, it would sit a little bit better with me. But as it stands, generally, in the fandom, people put Mulder and Scully up on this pedestal and say, They are the, quote, blueprint for romance. And I'm like, are we watching the same fucking show? Because something tells me that when you just continually gaslight a person, it's not romantic, and it shouldn't be glamorized. Like, something tells me that when you continually gaslight a person, maybe you have a toxic relationship. Maybe that's a toxic relationship, and it's not healthy or good or in any way romantic, okay? And you see Mulder do that throughout the series. Like, that's in character for him. I can name Beyond the Sea, Revelations, All Souls, The Red and the Black, Patient X. You want me to keep going? Okay, but then everyone points to that scene in season 11 where he, like, sits with her in a church and waits for her in a church. And they're like, oh, but he's better now. It only took him 30 fucking years. And it's not like he's doing this to get her back because she left him. Because the only time Mulder's considerate of Scully is, like, when she's on death's door, she's going to leave his ass. People never fucking talk about that. But I'm talking about it now that Mulder is a gaslighting piece of shit. And I don't care how sweet he is in season 11 and how many times he holds her hand or, like, does something chivalrous for her. You know what? Show me season 12 where Mulder gets Scully back and still treats her that way. That's what I want to see. I want to see Mulder continue to respect her even after she's off of death's doorstep or she's come back to him in a relationship. That's what I want to fucking see. So that's my tirade for today. I'm getting another hot flash. Perimenopause fucking sucks. That's another thing that can suck it. So I'm getting very angry. I need more water. Donnie Pfaster gets another prostitute. The show fucking hates sex workers. You can very much tell this show is written by straight white men, and how different and better the show would have been if there had been women, minorities, or marginalized people in the writing room. Like, just a scene like that, where this sex worker comes over to Donnie Pfaster's apartment and he's just going to torture and kill her. Like, it shows, like, how the writers view women and view marginalized people and view people society treats as second-class citizens, like sex workers, and how they make this violence against them into a subplot for their little alien show. Like, more people have said it, but it's worth repeating. Like, why do they need to brutalize women to tell this alien story? There's no reason that they should have done that. And it very much shows, like, how white men were writing this show. Like, from the time a woman's born, probably from the time a girl can walk, that's her reality. She's like, is this strange man going to torture and murder me? That's our reality. And that is something straight white men will never have to, it won't even cross their mind. And it very much shows, it reflects in the writing of the X-Files. They're like, why is everybody getting upset about this? Like, how does this, it's just like a cute subplot for this show when something like sexual assault, reproductive trauma, rape, and, violence against minorities and marginalized people, systemic discrimination against them, is something that affects people in real time every single fucking day. And you don't think it's harmful? Ask most of the fandom, like, what's your favorite episode? A lot of people will say Postmodern Prometheus. They're like, yeah, it's a classic. Like, that's my favorite episode. It's about rape. Like, the rapist is celebrated at the end. Or Small Potatoes, where the rapist is seen as a comedic character to be laughed at. It's harmful. And don't come at me with this shit of, like, the X-Files was made in the 90s and people didn't know any better. I'm so tired of that fucking argument. You know what? People in the 90s were still people. They weren't some soulless monsters without a conscience. Like, just because telling a story like that was socially acceptable does not make it right, okay? So don't come at me with this shit like, oh, it was the 90s and it's okay. It's like, fuck you. It's still wrong and it's still harmful and it needs to be addressed. And that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm fucking calling out that shit. Fuck them. So, back to the plot. This prostitute fucks up Donnie Pfaster, and I love it. In a show that systemically brutalizes sex workers, it's so good to see a sex worker fuck up the abuser. That just, my soul flies out of my body. I love it so much. Also, there's this hilarious scene. It's supposed to be like dark and intense, where Donnie Pfaster literally snatches her wig because he thinks she's a redhead, but she's just wearing a wig. And that part just cracks me up every time. It's supposed to be so serious and scary, and it's just, it makes me laugh. So, then he's captured by Reverend Orison. Good job, Reverend Orison. I mean, you had the chance to capture him before he brutalized 2 women and killed 1, but go the fuck off, I guess. There's also these great shots in the episode. There's this one where Donnie Pfaster is in Reverend Orison's apartment, and the X-Files has this thing, I don't know what it's called, I'm calling it liminal horror, where they will force the viewer to explore these very eerie places that are supposed to be filled with life and they're empty. This is one of the scenes where it's like you're almost like on a child's level, and you're exploring Reverend Orison's apartment. It stretches it out. And it forces you into this very uncomfortable, unsettling scene. And the camera guides you to the kitchen where Donnie Pfaster's in his underwear cutting up people. And that scene fucking gets to me. Also, there's a later scene where Scully confronts Pfaster that scares me every time. And it's just that. It's just the camera work, like, forcing you through this liminal space. And it's fucking terrifying. So, Reverend Orison is digging Donnie Pfaster's grave, and Donnie Pfaster turns into a demon. Is Donnie Pfaster actually a demon? I don't think he is. In Irresistible, he changes shape where his face will take on the shape of like other evil men, and then his face takes on the shape of like this demon-like creature. You could argue that Scully's just feeling a lot of stress in that moment, understandably, and she's hallucinating. But then in Orison, Reverend Orison sees that as well. And I believe that's Scully's psychic powers manifesting and Reverend Orison's psychic powers manifesting, because what I believe is Donnie Pfaster is a personification of evil white men and how our society enables them to keep doing unspeakable things. I don't think Donnie Pfaster himself is a supernatural being. I think that Scully and Reverend Orison, and it's told from their perspective in these scenes, that that's how they interpret him. And like Scully, I think Reverend Orison can see things and details and clues that other people just don't. And I think that's what gives him his, like, super hypnosis powers. So, he's telling Donnie, like, are you crying for yourself? Or are you crying for these girls you murdered? And then Donnie Pfaster's like, I cry for you. And he changes shape. Or the Reverend Orison sees him change shape into this demon. And he fucking kills Reverend Orison. I'm not sorry for Reverend Orison. He enabled all this shit. If Reverend Orison had stayed in his lane and helped people that deserved it, the next scene wouldn't happen. So then, oh God, the next scene, Mulder and Scully come to this scene where Reverend Orison is buried in the grave that he dug for Donnie Pfaster. And Scully is forced to apologize to Mulder because he fucking gaslit her this whole entire episode. And it makes me want to throw up. You know, compare this to the end of Kitsunigari, where Scully comes to Mulder and she's like, look, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I should have. And I kept expecting this when I was 15. Like, Mulder would come to Scully and, like, say, I'm sorry I was an asshole. You were right. That would be the good thing to do if he was a good partner. And he just stands there and he, like, smugly takes her apology. There's also the scene where they confront Reverend Orison in the hospital, and Scully's telling Mulder, she's like, I'm feeling these things. I know they're true. And Mulder says, come with me, Scout, and I will show you the truth. And it's icky, like how he's forcing his beliefs on her. It makes me want to throw up. Like, how many times does Scully force her beliefs on Mulder? She never fucking did, but he will. And that's why their relationship's fucked. Like, again, I said it before, I'll say it again. This is why I read fan fiction. This is why I write fan fiction. Is those shitty aspects of Mulder's character are addressed and they're worked through. And he has character development where he's not just this insufferable asshole. And that's why we need fan fiction. That's why fan fiction Mulder is superior to canon Mulder. And I'll die on my fucking heel. So, Scully goes home, and Donnie Pfaster is waiting for her. This scene's terrifying. She picks up the clock, which said 666 at the beginning of the episode when she woke up, and it says 666 again, and Scully goes into fight mode. So, in Irresistible, Scully was fresh from her abduction, and when Donnie Pfaster captured her, she was terrified out of her mind, which is very understandable. And I love how Donnie Pfaster approaches Scully, and he's like, she's not going to put up a fight, and Scully's like, no, fuck you. And she fucks him up. She rams him into a mirror, she punches him, she scratches his eyes out. I really think the only reason Scully lost that fight, and he captured her, is because she's smaller than him. She's a very small woman. He's a very, very big dude. He has her down on the floor, and she tells him, it's one line, and it speaks volumes about Scully's character. She says, if I hadn't have asked the judge to give you a life sentence, you would have gotten the death penalty. And I can't wrap my head around that. It's incomprehensible to me how this man brutalized her and tortured her and almost killed her, and she still feels compassion for him. It very much shows Scully's character. Like, and so he ties her up, he puts her in a closet, and he goes to run her a bath, because that's what Donnie Pfaster does. He bathes the women before he kills them, or after he kills them. I'm not really clear. So, he also lights all these fucking candles, which have to be Scully's. And I love how Scully loves candles. Like, I love candles. In the pilot, Scully's in her motel room, and she's just lit all these fucking candles, and she had to bring those with her. And I love that about her. She's like, I'm gonna pack candles in case there's a power outage. That's something I would do, okay? So he lights all of Scully's fucking candles. But Scully is not a damsel in distress. She's fucking crawling across the floor. This is a dark and intense scene, and I acknowledge that. But she's wearing these adorable little flannel jammies and little fuzzy slippers, and she's about to fucking fuck up a man. I love that about her. She's like, oh, Pfaster, you think you're gonna get me just because I'm in my night-night clothes? Fuck, you're not. So then Mulder is in his apartment, and he hears this song come on the radio, and it's Don't Look Any Further, and he runs to Scully's aid. And even when he does that, it can be argued, did he really believe her, or was he just paranoid about Pfaster? Given Mulder's track record, I'm going to say he did not believe Scully. So he runs over. You really think Mulder's going to save Scully. In this scene, time slows down. And again, it's like that moment in the apartment where it was liminal horror, and you're forced to go through this slow motion scene, and it's terrifying. Pfaster and Mulder has his gun on Pfaster. There's no sound, and it's super scary. And Pfaster turns. Him and Mulder are looking at something behind them, and it's Scully, and she's walking out of her bedroom. She has the bandana that Pfaster gagged her with around her neck. And I know this is a super intense moment, but me and my spouse were rewatching this, and he called her the most adorable railroad engineer. The most adorable and dangerous railroad engineer. And I thought that was cute. She's fucked up. Her nose is bleeding. And the look in her eyes, and this is purely Gillian Anderson's acting, is she doesn't even speak. The look in her eyes is past fear. It's past sorrow, and all she has is vengeance. And that's all Gillian Anderson's acting. The woman's a fucking goddess. So you see an illumination of her face. You don't see what she's doing. And the lights blow out. I don't know why. Scully has telekinetic powers. Like I said in my review of Beyond the Sea, like, Scully's the Jean Grey of the X-Files world. It's like, does she have this power? Yes, she does. So is it that? We don't know. And then you see Pfaster fall. And the sound comes back. And the look on Mulder's face. One of my Twitter followers said Mulder was giving Scully this moment to decide what to do herself. I really don't believe that, because he reacts with just sheer incredulousness. He cannot believe she's done this. Like, if Mulder shot a man in cold blood, which he's done every season of the X-Files, there's a joke that Mulder, like, kills a man in cold blood every season of the X-Files, and everyone just kind of fucking forgets about it. I'm thinking Bad Blood. I'm thinking Redux. Or is it? Yeah, Redux. Bad Blood. Mulder just, like, fucking kills people. And everybody's like, okay, whatever. They forget about it. That would be in character for Mulder. For Scully to do that, it shakes him to his core. He can't believe it. And she can't believe it. She has tears in her eyes. And she's holding her gun, and again, it's all Gillian's acting. The look in her eyes is, she's like, what have I done? So, that's the best scene in the X-Files. Why do I love it? Because an abusive, disgusting man gets paid back by the person he's directly abused. And I could count on my hands the time that's happened in the X-Files. Given it has so many nasty, abusive men who are never brought to justice. This is like heroin. It's like heroin. When I watch it, I'm like, yes! I just want to say, I've never done any hard drugs. I haven't. That was just a figure of speech, okay? I don't do hard drugs. That was just a figure of speech. Let's say it's like Willy Wonka candy. There we go. That's better. It's like Willy Wonka candy coursing through my veins is when Scully shoots Donnie Pfaster. So, you get this coda scene where Mulder is with the authorities in Scully's apartment, and she's in her bedroom. She's wrapped up in a little blanket. She's fucking gone through it. Again, she's past sorrow and fear. And the fear she's feeling is not of Pfaster. As Mulder asks her, he's like, well, were you afraid of Pfaster? And she's like, no. She's like, I'm afraid of what I did. This is super interesting. That when Scully encounters pure evil, she seems more invested in the situation than, like, a casual law enforcement officer would. Like, and she seems fearful for herself, not so much of these powers she has, but what they could do to other people. And you see this throughout the series where Scully's like, what I have, is it good or is it evil? Will I go the way of Pfaster? She's like, well, I go the way of Robert Patrick Modell. It's very much that. And looking back in the series, when you see Scully as a child, or it's in her childhood is implied, you get this vibe that something happened when she was a little girl, or at least a young woman. Where her powers got out of control. I really think that's what happened. The first time we see Scully doing something trippy, she's 6 years old. So it was probably when she was a little girl. And she did something and it terrified her parents. and they immediately stifled that. They were like, you can't do this. This is terrifying. And Scully's always has this internal struggle of like, she's like, I have these powers. I know I have these powers. What could they do? And I think that's a lot of why Scully has the I'm afraid to believe. Like, that's part of her personality. Like, Mulder's curious about supernatural. He wants to know because he's never experienced it firsthand. And it's certainly never come from within him. It comes from within Scully. And it fucking terrifies her. And that's Orison. It's one of my favorite episodes. It's so good. This video is over an hour long. And you know what? That's great. Look me up on Twitter. I am at raccoons_dead. I am on Tumblr at Just Awful X-Men Art. I am on DeviantArt at dead/raccoons. I am on Instagram at deadraccoonsdrawsit. I will be posting some X-Files art very soon. I also have this project with the X-Men I'm super excited with. The only thing I love on the same level as the X-Files is the X-Men. So just look me up. Tell me, what underrated X-Files episode do you want me to review? Do you want me to sponsor your product? I will happily do it. I love you guys. Stay cool, stay hydrated, hug your mom, tell your friends you love them, pet your dog, pet your cat, pet your pet fish if you're Mulder. I love you guys. Mwah.